Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kimberly Guilfoyle Show, live on Rumble, where facts come first and where news is done right. It's been a tragic start to the new year, with 14 people killed by an ISIS terrorist in New Orleans. This terror attack follows years of Joe Biden's open border, allowing countless terrorists to flood across our border. This is a scary reminder that the threat of Islamic terrorism is active. But DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas thinks the problem is white supremacy.
And what we in the Department of Homeland Security have assessed is that the greatest terrorism-related threat that we face in the homeland is the threat of domestic violent extremism. Individuals drawn to violence because of ideologies of hate or false narratives propagated on social media and other online platforms. And the most prominent threat is the threat of white supremacists.
What's ironic is that Mayorkas said that at an event hosted by Al Sharpton, who himself is a racist. It's fun to mock and laugh at woke politics, but the consequences of liberal lunacy can be deadly. The New Orleans attacker supposedly joined ISIS before this summer, but the FBI didn't have him on his radar. This failure is a reminder of how important it is for the Senate to swiftly confirm Kash Patel as the next FBI director. January 20th cannot come soon enough. And joining me now is Steve Friend. Steve, thank you so much for being back on the program. Happy New Year, my friend. I wish we had something that wasn't so tragic to talk about, but this is the state of affairs right now. What were your first thoughts when you heard the news of the terrorist attack?
Well, Happy New Year to you, Kim. I appreciate you having me on today. Look, I saw this happen, and my actually immediate reaction was we are in 2025. And immediately the separate political camps are going to default back to where they were in 2001, post 9/11. And this is sort of the cautionary tale that I'm seeing, and I'm seeing the American right fall into the exact same trap again, the American right that got us into the Patriot Act, right? And it's the slippery slope argument that I don't have to make anymore because we have a proof of concept here. I think that the argument that the FBI was not keeping its eye on the ball on legitimate bad actors out there because they were too busy trying to chase down fake white supremacy cases or grandmas who were at the Capitol on January 6th is completely accurate. But I think that there needs to be a period on the end of that. The FBI should not be investigating grandmas at the Capitol, period. There should not be a comma there where it says, and going in and investigating people for their religious activities. And the reason I say that is because we had the proof of concept that when the FBI was empowered and emboldened after the September 11th attacks, they took that power and hired a bunch of communists and a bunch of DEI employees, and they went after the true threat to the bureaucracy, and that was small government people like you and me here. So that's my fear here, is that we're going to default into that same sort of reaction that we have to address this threat and get away from the realization that inherent in a free society, as we do live in here in this country, allegedly, there is inherent risk to that. And I'm calling on all Americans to be your own first responder at this point. No more of the just wait and call the first responders. Don't be calling and waiting for the government to get there to help you, because when seconds count, the police are minutes away.
You're absolutely right. I mean, seconds can make all the difference in the world. And I want to talk a little bit, from bigger picture. How big of a threat is Islamic, terrorism right now in all these different geopolitical regions? And quite frankly, who knows how many terrorists have slipped in under Biden? That's something that I know alarms so many Americans.
Yeah, you're spot on, especially in that last portion there. We have allowed 10, 20, 30, I think it could be 50 million people that have streamed across the border at this point over the last 4 years. No accountability. And that says nothing of the parties that, because of the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the Biden administration brought in hundreds of thousands of unvetted Afghanis who've come in that might subscribe to the same sort of ideology here. It is a legitimate threat that you would hope that an objective force for good, if the FBI hoped to be that, will be looking into legitimate bad actors. The problem that we're sitting in now is that this is an agency, and the entire national security apparatus to begin with is completely politicized. They're looking at who they're told to. They're going to go where their bread is buttered, and they're going to go after what Alejandro Mayorkas says is domestic violent extremism, i.e. white supremacy, because that's the directive that they've been given, and then they're reaping the whirlwinds of. They've gotten enhanced budgets, individuals have been promoted, individuals have gotten their own bonuses in the amount of $50,000 a year because they manipulated cases related to January 6th and called them white supremacy cases, when in fact, if they're even legitimate cases, they're criminal offenses.
And what do you make of how this attack is, playing out politically? We're seeing some of the reverberations about it, the discussion on news across all the different outlets.
Look, I think that it's a healthy reminder that when you choose security over freedom, you wind up with neither, as we're seeing now. I'll go back to what I said, being at the end of the slippery slope. The political conversation needs to be had about what does national security actually mean. Yes. in a free republic. National security before 9/11 meant that we had a continuity of government. We respected and protected people's rights underneath the Constitution. But then after September 11th, we got the no-fail mission. A no-fail mission, no attack will ever happen on American soil again. And you cannot have a zero-fail mission without despotism attached to that. And unfortunately, too many Americans gave up their freedom for security, and now they have an agency that has the ultimate power. It's like Skynet from Terminator. Yes. It looked at and assessed that the greatest threat to itself were people who wanted a smaller government, and it has weaponized all the different levers of power against them.
Now, do you think there is a nexus or a connection between the New Orleans attack and now let's talk about the Las Vegas, the Cybertruck bomb?
I don't. I think that it's pretty clear that the New Orleans attack, in light of the ISIS flag and ideology they've been able to flesh out there, is pretty clear. When it comes to the Las Vegas attack, to me, it has all the hallmarks of being an emotionally disturbed person, might just be at their wits' end with whatever the demons were in between his ears at that point. I know they were both in the military, but going into Fort Bragg, it's an enormous installation. I think that's trying to connect dots that really just don't exist. To me, the January 1st connection being as symbolic as it's the first of the year, it could easily be a conclusion that independent parties got to. I don't see a consistent ideology between the two.
Sure. Okay. And what sort of steps, if you can walk us through the process, when you have an investigation like this, what's happening at the agency? How are they handling it? What's the process to investigate this and, come to some conclusions?
Well, it's a good question because I don't think the agency itself knows. They're doing what the default government reaction is, and that is sending as many people as they possibly can, knowing that it's not really going to do much. I mean, I have contacts on the inside who are being deployed from outside of the New Orleans or Las Vegas divisions just so that the FBI can say that they're sending all necessary resources, and all those people will do is stand around and collect hotel points and per diem. Logical investigative steps would be finding out who your subjects are. They're no longer alive. There's no expectation of privacy here. There needs to be a thorough looking into their background, the connections they have, look at their devices, what their activities were in the lead ups to these events, look at their financial histories, and then sort of get the portrait of the individual. And in talking and having conversations with people about who they were, maybe get an understanding of what was driving them here, and hopefully getting a best practices in place to prevent a future attack from going on in the future.
Well, also, talk about this a little bit more. Do you think the Las Vegas bomb was just like a symbolic suicide, or he meant to kill the people? And I'm trying to ask you to jump inside a crazy person's head, but nevertheless, just based on your experience, how do you see it?
From what I've read about it, it looks like there was a gunshot wound to this individual here. To me, it seems consistent with there was a suicide to it. And frankly, from my experience in law enforcement, not just in the FBI, but in local law enforcement, one of the more gross realities of suicide is that men typically try to go out in a blaze of glory. They want as much carnage as they possibly can. It's a nasty cleanup. Whereas women, they tend to get all their affairs in order and try to make the house clean for the police. To me, it looks like that this individual was probably trying to take his own life and do so in a way that got a lot of headlines.
So let's talk a little bit about, I think that's spot on analysis. Also talk a little bit about, he was trained, right? As a Green Beret, that's an elite special forces, unit, special operator. Are we surprised by any of the I guess, details of, the crime scene, of the operation, of what he was trying to do, that it wasn't handled or done better. I hate to say it, but you just look at these things to see what was going through his mind. Like you said, was just like maximum carnage? Was it, I'm curious.
The fact that he had some sophisticated training in the military leads me to believe that if he was dealing with some sort of emotional disturbance and wasn't really trying to have a lot of collateral damage to other people, was trying to make just it about himself and about that vehicle at that point to get the headlines and get the eyeballs on it. Because you're right. I mean, pouring gasoline and fireworks inside of a vehicle isn't going to generate an IED like you would expect somebody who had sophisticated training from special forces here. And then I think we also need to re-examine the way that our guys are being vetted as they're going in. I mean, even with the selection processes, it seems to be selecting people that really have an ability to deal with sleep deprivation, really. And it could be just something as simple as that, or it could be something that manifested in this young man's head later on. But I mean, ultimately, the ideology, there was no sort of ISIS connection there. So I think that all the dots, the connective tissue that folks are trying to do on the internet, and I understand because we don't trust our government now, which is healthy. You want to have healthy skepticism. I think that the facts, as they have come in, have not borne out that these two individuals or anything other than the specific date that they chose to take action was consistent.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting that you say that. Talk to me a little bit more about it, because this has been sort of an evolution or devolution of public trust in our government entities, government officials, government agencies.
I think really the scales fell away from so many people's eyes during coronavirus because the lie became the point from our government, where they did not care, that it didn't make sense. It was just a power grab. And people really had one of two options at that point. They could have gone the healthy route, which many did, and I think most of the people in your audience did, and that is just look at everything that they're told with a healthy grain of skepticism and consider the facts and the source of that information and make a decision about what is true and what isn't based on those facts. And then there were other people that said, you lied to me, shame on you, and it'll be shame on me if you ever do that again. So I'm going to deliberately accept the exact opposite of whatever you tell me. And I understand that sentiment, but it's led to people coming to conclusions that are just patently ridiculous at this point. I mean, like a flat earth theory or a weather control. I mean, things that just don't make a whole lot of sense. And then when the government does do things, they're stepping beyond what there needs to be when it comes to what is realistic. I mean, you take like a horrible incident like the failed assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, where there were people that were claiming that there was a zip line, that there was a second shooter on a water tower, and he must have zip lined. I mean, that would have been like a multiple 1,000-pound zip line that went several miles in order for that to happen. It just wasn't really true. But people thought, well, the government told me it's one shooter, ergo, I'm going to conclude that it has to be multiple shooters. So again, you go back to the former description I gave you. That's the healthiest way to go. Look at everything with the healthy grain of skepticism. Make your decision based on the facts and circumstances that you have. And you don't need to connect dots that aren't there and aren't logical.
Sure. No, absolutely. But it's interesting because you really have seen this whole public, discourse move to trying to investigate, see if they can figure things out, because they don't have the faith. They do not have the faith anymore, FBI or DOJ, all of the above. And I know we have tremendous change coming now, which is going to be fantastic. Talk to me a little bit about that, about Kash Patel, about what you think this means for the future of the agency, and what you would like to see him do to restore integrity and accountability and, public trust in the agency.
I've been on record that I want the FBI completely shattered into 1,000 pieces and scattered to the winds. But if there is in one individual, I'll give the old college try to make the demolition into a renovation. It's Kash Patel. He's eminently qualified. He brings a unique perspective because he wasn't just a career prosecutor. He worked in national security, worked in intelligence, but he also was a defense attorney, which I think is important because he has a healthy respect for the amount of power that's at the fingertips of the FBI.
Oh, I agree.
Necessary changes that have to happen. They have to get rid of the intelligence collection apparatus entirely. entirely. They need to get rid of the quota system that exists that says that we get financial awards for arresting the right number of people. They have to revamp the way they're doing hiring. I mean, we saw the assistant special agent in charge yesterday in New Orleans come forward with a nose ring and saying that this likely wasn't terrorism. I mean, that's a complete DEI hire. So top to bottom, there needs to be an assessment of who is actually worthy of carrying the badge and the credentials, people who are vetted as being people of integrity, who are going to protect and defend the American people against fraud and force and uphold their oath of office. And the last thing that I can say about Kash Patel is just the measure of the man. 2+ years ago, when I was at my lowest of lows, Kash Patel located me, did his own investigating, called me up on Thanksgiving, and his foundation offered to help my family pay for our medical insurance and some bills in the Christmas season. And Kash Patel said that his foundation was going to do that at a charity, and he didn't want credit for it. He didn't expect anything in return. He didn't want any publicity. He just wanted to be there to support people who are willing to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, for the right reasons. That's the measure of a man who I would be happy to follow if he's going to take and hopefully get the helm at the FBI.
Absolutely. He's going to do a great job. And I like the points you bring up. You know, I'm a former prosecutor, but I do like that he has defense experience. And one of the things that I've said is people need to be cognizant of the power of the Office of the Prosecutors when you're doing this, but you control everything. That's why you have an obligation to really examine thoroughly all the facts, the evidence, et cetera. And I said, besides, winning the case and putting bad guys away, some of my finest moments were those cases where I determined this was the wrong person, there was insufficient evidence, et cetera, because you have someone's liberty, their freedom, everything with these accusations and cases brought against them. So we have to be very, careful and aware of the power that the office holds. And I know with his experience as well, like you said, the dual experience of being a prosecutor, being a defense attorney, and then, the third factor, which is the national security experience, I think is going to be very good. Well, I hope you go back there and clean it up and go with Kash. I always want the best for you because you are the absolute best. Plug your show as well before you have to jump because I know you're a busy guy.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you again for having me. Folks can check me out with my cohort, and that's Garrett O'Boyle, another suspended indefinitely forever unpaid FBI whistleblower. It's called the American Radicals Podcast, which is on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday on Rumble, rumble.com/amradpod.
All right. Fantastic, Steve. Friend, thank you so much for being on the program and best of luck to you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. God bless. And in the meantime, also be sure to support the 1775 Coffee Company. 1775 coffee is brewed to perfection, crafted with precision, and built on patriotism. The farm-to-cup process means there is quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. All the beans are ethically and exclusively single-sourced. And that's not all. 1775 coffee stands for quality, freedom, and pushing back against the left-wing corporate agenda that has taken over so much of the coffee industry. So please try 1775 coffee today. Why not? Go to 1775coffee.com/KG for 15% off your first order. Hey, that's a good deal to start the year off right. And I also want to bring you a special message from Patriot Lifestyle where you can save more and spend less on a whole host of different benefits from savings on travel, identity theft, legal services, and even pet care. Take a look. Guilfoyle here, and I'm so excited to introduce the Patriot Lifestyle Benefits Program. With our benefits program, you get a range of lifestyle benefits at an affordable price so you can save money and stay secure. For example, as a member, you will access exclusive discounts with NB Cash Back, so you can save more on your everyday expenses like groceries, restaurants, and even auto services. And with NB Travel, you can experience more but spend less by enjoying deep discounts on flights, hotels, entertainment, and so much more. These benefits are available to you and your immediate family to use anytime, anywhere. We also offer identity theft protection, so you can stay on top of any unauthorized, fraudulent, or illegal activity. And access free and discounted legal services, so you can protect your rights and receive top legal advice without breaking the bank. Plus, enjoy peace of mind on the highway with our roadside assistance program. And even take care of your furry friends with discounts on pet food, toys, medicine, grooming, and even trips to the vet. Our program is designed specifically for America First patriots like you, who understand the importance of letting your dollars reflect your values and supporting companies who support you. And the best part of all of this, our benefits are at below market prices, so you can enjoy all of them while living the Patriot lifestyle to the fullest. So don't miss out. Visit our website at patriotbenefits.net. That's patriotbenefits.net. Thank you again for choosing the Patriot Lifestyle Benefits Program, where real benefits and real savings are our top priority. Join us today and start saving now. And you can go to patriotbenefits.net to learn more, because these programs all come at an extraordinary value and will greatly improve your life. And now we are joined by another former FBI special agent, Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us and coming on the program to discuss this, important stories.
Yeah, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, my friend. So
what a weird way to start it, huh?
I know, that's the thing, right? We'll talk about that, because the timing is everything, right? Sending a message like that at the beginning of the year, doing something like this before Trump gets in. But what did you make of the FBI's first press conference regarding the terror attack? You know, the special agent had a nose ring, charming, and falsely said it wasn't a terrorist attack, even though they already knew he had an ISIS flag. I know.
It's terrible. It's so embarrassing. It's just, everything about it is sad. There's an agency image that people think is going to come out there. There's a competency. Steve Friend, who you just had on, who I talk to all the time, has this idea of the myth of competency and the idea that the FBI is going to actually be able to do all these things. If the FBI was truly competent at this, think about what that investigation is called. It's called counterterrorism. It's not called terrorist investigations. In theory, counterterrorism means you stopped it. And that we call that left of bang. That's before the thing goes and explodes or someone drives into a space. So if you go left of bang, you actually are interrupting, dismantling, and doing all the things that they get credit for. The problem is the FBI has gotten really lazy about that. So they've started creating terrorism, which we've seen. They go and they bust up those cases because they're easier to investigate. And when something really happens where someone is determined and they didn't talk to an FBI source, which we might find out actually is not the case in this, I don't have any information on it, but I wouldn't be shocked to find out that they were actually talking to somebody in the FBI at some point or some sort of a handler. Then you got right of bang. That's where we're at right now. And then you've got somebody step up on January 1st, which means they had a skeleton crew at the field office, and you got whoever's around. And it turns out that person who's around is a black female with a nose ring who's wearing like a fleece instead of a suit and gets in front of a camera. She has no business talking in front of it. And then she just turns around and denies things that we had just heard the chief of police in that city say were true. And everybody who pays attention to social media, basically all the nerds like me that are sitting there on Twitter all day that are tracking what's going on, they go, that's not true. We've seen a picture of an ISIS flag. How on earth are you going to say this is not terrorism and we're going to pacifically ask you to not go these places? It's one more slap in the face of the American people, and it's one more mark against, I think, the FBI. This is not like because she's a black female. It's because we had a management culture in the Bureau. So DEI might be part of it, but it's a management culture that says competency is the enemy. We don't want a Steve Friend. We don't want a Kyle Seraphin. We don't want people asking questions. We need yes people. And we're going to promote those because they do not threaten the incompetent folks that are running it. And there's another problem with it, which is that we've politicized intelligence. And I learned this by sitting and talking to a woman named Sarah Adams. She's a former CIA analyst. She's been on Sean Ryan's podcast a couple times. I sat for a couple hours with her last night on an X space or a Twitter space, and we're talking about this concept. There's a big problem when you start putting political priorities on your intelligence gathering. When you say white supremacy is the biggest threat to the homeland, and you start ignoring the real threat that we used to know about starting on September 12th of 2001, which is called international terrorism. The FBI got upside down with that. They got ahead of their skis and they went after the convenient, and they forgot to go after the real thing that has caused a lot of damage, has killed far more people in the last 25 years in America, right? It's the reason we went to war and we're there for 2 decades. And they let all these people in and they allowed something to happen that had no business happening in the first place because they got their eye off the ball and they politicized intelligence collection. When you add politics to it, you also put money on the wrong side of the coin, which is why we had January 6ers arrested and we didn't have people looking in for ISIS connections, I think. It's just, it's tragic because somebody's, 15 somebody's paid with their lives for something that they kind of expect is going to be the basic function, which is do not fail at terrorism prevention.
So let's talk about this. I'm loving this whole, I mean, it's terrible, but it's a very good terms, left of bang, right of bang. But let's talk about how the FBI moves from here, okay? And a very awful way to start, the year. Got this investigation. It just like flies right in the face, smacks us again of DEI and all this other nonsense going on. How do they restore, and Kash Patel, once he gets confirmed, God willing, public confidence in the Bureau? How important is it now that, the Senate actually confirms Kash to be able to get in there? We were talking to Steve, you heard earlier about he's got like 3 very good things, many things going for him, but 3 aspects of his background and career with national security, being a former prosecutor, being a defense attorney, to see things multifaceted from all angles. But I think they're going to fight like hell to preserve the status quo, to give him a hard time about getting in.
Oh, I definitely agree with you. I'm confident they will try to maintain status quo. That's what the FBI is. The FBI does. It bubble wraps directors. Chris Wray was a status quo pick. Chris Wray might have not even started out as a problem, but by the time that he agreed to the terms of his directorship inside the Bureau specifically, not dealing with the outside world, but dealing with the inside of the Bureau, they wrap him up, they send him off on these press tours, go visit all the field offices, go talk and shake hands. We're going to give you questions. What's your favorite ice cream? Is it exciting to have a security detail? All the dumbest things you can imagine. Now, I'm totally biased about Kash Patel because I think Kash is a great guy as a human being. I'd sit and have a beer with him any day. I sent him a text message the other day, and I started off with the word bro, which is probably not the way that you should address the next FBI director, but I did it anyway because that's the kind of guy he is, and he doesn't think about it. When my friends in the Bureau go, what do we think? Is Kash Patel all right? And I go, he's a bro. And they're like, oh, good. Because I come from a military culture. I come from like kind of a masculine, warrior background where we wanted to carry guns and we wanted to go grab bad people. And if somebody's a bro, it means that they're on our team. So I talked about it and I sent him a text and I just said, bro, you're inheriting a factory that has produced corruption, but it happens to be a crime scene right now. Wow. Because the things that they have done and the sort of what could be benevolent screw ups have become real world problems and ended the lives of Americans. They have caused significant amounts of damage to the trust in that agency. We have a serious problem. So to answer your question directly, how do you get that trust back? I think there's a couple of pieces. Number one, I hate this part of it. You have to wear a suit. I didn't like wearing a suit when I was an FBI agent. I'm a regular guy. I like to be an outdoor dog. I'd like to be wearing this or t-shirt.
Right.
But when I was in the military, if you screwed up, you found yourself on base restriction and uniform at all times. You couldn't go outside without your uniform on. You don't get to wear civilian clothes because you haven't earned that right. And at this point, we almost have to go back to like private school rules, dress code. You have to be a person that earns integrity and earns the understanding that people look at you and see integrity by acting like you have it. And so you lost the privilege of being able to dress yourself. You showed up in a fleece that said, behavioral analysis unit, which made all the conspiracy people go nuts in New Orleans. You wore a nose ring on national television after an immediately significant event that is going to forever change the way people look at it in that city, at least on that day. And it's going to go forward for at least the next couple of years. They're going to always remember that. You are an embarrassment. So you got to wear a suit every day when you go out and talk to people, particularly if you work in counterterrorism or counterintelligence, because we expect you to be professionals. Maybe the drug and gang guys get a different animal.
Yeah,
and then
I
the second
agree.
thing is,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, don't you want to see your FBI agent knock on the door? Like, you don't want to ever see that, but if you have to, don't you want him to be in a suit? So
don't say that to us in this house.
I know it. I know exactly. I feel the same way, but I still want to see him in a suit. And if I see him in plaid, then I'm like, who are you? And, I know why you're wearing that. I just don't respect it. I used to put on a suit if I went to go do interviews in all places except when I worked in New Mexico, which you might get shot for doing it there. That doesn't make any sense. There's certain small areas where you could do it. The second thing is they need to do transparency in a real big way. The history of the Bureau basically is a long-term excuse to say no. When they're asked, can we have this information? No. Can you tell us about this ongoing investigation? No. What can you tell us about what you're doing right now with our money? Nothing. It is a no factory. And I think that the number one priority should be on the public affairs side and also on the Office of Congressional Affairs, which are 2 very small pieces, but that's our media picture into what the Bureau is doing. They need to work towards yes. Their default position should be, this is the American people's information. We are a law enforcement agency. We are not full of spies. That was my joke when I used to work there. I did counterintelligence for 2 years in Washington, D.C. And people would say, what do you do for a living? And I say, oh, I'm a secret agent for the FBI. And my neighbors would go, "Don't you mean special agent?" And I go, "I don't think so, man, because everything I work on says secret. So I'm pretty sure I'm a secret agent." And that's a tongue-in-cheek way of having a little bit of humor about how ridiculous the overclassification and the instinct to hide all of the public's information. There's no reason to classify most of the work that the Bureau does, but even criminal investigations are done on what we call the red side, or the Bureau net, which is all classified up to and including secret, which means normal people can't watch it. They can't look at it. They can't even share the files. That's on purpose. That culture needs to be reformed. I don't want to use the word obliterated because that's what I feel like saying, and that seems like an emotional word. Mm-hmm. It needs to be reformed, and it needs to be redirected towards a priority of America pays for this agency, and the agency's job is to serve America. They are supposed to protect the American people from force and fraud, the real purpose of government. They've gotten away from this, and they've gone off on this "we serve ourselves," the self-licking ice cream analogy that you hear about in Washington, D.C. The FBI exists for the sake of the people who work in the FBI and the good men and women of the FBI. No, your job is to serve the Constitution. The agency is irrelevant. That's right. The director is not important. If you think that you're going to resign because Kash Patel comes in instead of Chris Wray or Bob Mueller or anybody else for that matter, you got the wrong message when you signed up. You didn't get to swear allegiance to some person.
Exactly.
The Constitution, we've all taken that oath. We know what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, just you can't even imagine this, right? They've gone so far afield. And let's talk about that, because at some point, did the FBI shift its focus from, combating and really focusing and drilling down on Islamic terrorism to like chasing conservatives is what it felt like. It was like hunting season. You get your tag. I got my tags. Go hunt conservatives.
They sure did. That's a great question. And let me try to put some historical perspective. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what went wrong with the agency that I thought I was serving in a decent way. And here's what I've come up with. Prior to 9/11, 2001, the American people had one definition, and we accepted one definition of national security. And that was protect and preserve the Constitution of America, to make sure that that was our fundamental ruling document and all the rights and privileges that go with it and the way the Constitution establishes our government to work. That's what we thought it meant. And that's what we enlisted, and that's what we signed up as police officers and sheriff's deputies and prosecutors and all the people that went along with it. All of our military members from all branches said, we're going to preserve this animal so that it is special and different. And after 9/11 in 2001, probably 9/12, American government, I guess, adopted this new no-fail attitude. And I heard Steve Friend say it. It's a tyrannical mandate. No American dies from terrorist activity on U.S. soil. And the minute that you adopt a no-fail mission, which is what CT is, it's a no-fail mission. We don't accept failure. That means you're going to infringe on some civil liberties. That means you're going to start encroaching in really bad ways. And that's what happened. And so in order to justify no fail, we gave incredible intelligence powers. We gave all of these abilities to go to our domestic law enforcement apparatus, where they should be verboten. They are absolutely antithetical to serving warrants where you have to, go through due process. That is not how national security works. That's not how intelligence works. So I think if we're going to trace it, it looks something like this. September 12th, we get a new definition of national security, and everybody is looking for a thing called IT, international terrorism. That's bad people overseas with ideas from overseas. And then we got this little change, and it happened sometime in the middle of the second term of Bush, first term of Obama, where they said, we're really running out of the international terrorists. The military is killing them off. They're engaging them overseas. They're keeping them occupied. There are not that many in the United States to find. And there's a lot of money. So we got to figure out something to do to make sure we justify this job. And they found a thing called HVEs, homegrown violent extremists. Those are domestic. Maybe they are here on a visa. Maybe they're here as a green card holder. Maybe they were a first generation American, but they're of Somali descent or something like that, right? So they have a tie back to another place, but they are domestic and they have a reason to be in the U.S., but they have a foreign ideology. They're Al-Shabaab, they're ISIS, they're Al-Qaeda, take your pick. Mm-hmm. And that became a thing that the FBI looked for, DHS was looking for, whether it be ICE, whether it be HSI and so on, some of the three-letter agencies. And they started hunting these people. And they ran out of them too, because once people get to America, they tend to get radicalized to be Americans. Most people don't want to go blow stuff up. And once you run out of HVEs, you're already looking within your own house for terrorism. And they still had to justify this budget. And it's my belief that that's when they pivoted from HVE to DVE. And that's domestic violent extremists. Those are you and me. Those are MAGA people. Those are anti-government, anti-authority violent extremists as categorized. It's the fake white supremacy threat that's always out there. It's all of these people that don't fit today's narrative. It's politicized intelligence. And they prioritized a bad guy, a boogeyman, And then they went to go find them, and they found there's not even that many of those people. So they had to make up most of those cases. And whether you watch, Police State that Dinesh D'Souza put on, and I was a part of that movie,
Yes.
They document a
film.
lot of cases. The crazy thing is this. The political left should actually be on our team for this, because for the longest time, the people they went after are people that they would lionize. They're people that were Muslim folks that were being set up. The reason why you're not going to get cooperation in New Orleans from the mosque that was attended by the guy who went and did that suicide mission is because of things the FBI did going back to like 2007. And they can look, there have been Supreme Court cases in the last 2 years about Operation Flex, where the Bureau literally went in, paid an informant who was not Muslim, who was a workout fanatic, and that's why they called it Operation Flex. And he went in to teach Muslim dudes how to lift weights and be gym bros. And in doing so, he tried to get them to radicalize him so that he could set them up with cases. And he was doing surveillance in their mosque, setting up or attempting to set up counterterrorism cases because there was nothing there. And they all had their civil liberties infringed on in meaningful ways. They fought this all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court basically said national security is more important. We learned the wrong lesson in 9/11. But we've also burned trust of Muslim communities, of Black communities. We've burned trust of the patriot community and just regular white people who live out in Appalachia that just don't want to be screwed with. And all of these people are now looking at government going, you're not serving us. And so we're going to see another uptick. We're going to go backwards, I think, to HVEs, people who are now radicalized domestically. Because they've had, 8 years of being told all these people in America are terrible. This is an awful country. Everybody is mean and racist and crappy, and you should be stopped. And now they're going to start taking some action. And we let God knows how many people over the border they're going to help them.
We were talking about that earlier. I mean, really nobody has a complete grasp of how many people have come across the border that want to harm our country. We have a serious national security issue because border security is a national security, and we had no border, quite frankly. It was open, it was porous, it was encouraged, created, cultivated by the Biden-Harris administration. And it's a little bit frightening, to be honest with you, because they're out there, and you just wonder, I mean, this is how they start off, the year, and doing this, the timing before President Trump gets in. I mean, do you worry as you think about this, about similar terrorist attacks striking this year?
I have been worried about this for at least 18 months since it started, kind of popped up on my mental awareness that this is a problem. So here, let's get some perspective. We had material, we had human beings trafficked in over the southern border. That's obviously the case. We brought in God knows who when we had the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan going back to August of 2021. I was working for the FBI at the time. I was working in New Mexico. And in my tiny little area of responsibility, we had 16 total FBI agents for basically a couple hundred miles of Mexican border, plus 2 different military installations where we had 10,000 Afghans on each one. They were coming in as parolees of the State Department. We had 10,000 on Holloman Air Force Base, another 10,000 on Fort Bliss. And just in that 20,000 people, who we had no idea who they were, by the way. And there were rape cases, and there were domestic violence cases, and there were beatings, and there were all kinds of the shenanigans. There were also hundreds of them that just walked off, got into an Uber, and disappeared with no paperwork, with no idea who they were, with no legal status to be in this country, because they didn't even get processed by the State Department. And what we saw was the Biden administration just screw Americans. I will be very, very clear about this. I watched people from the CIA on those bases dealing with the people that they had recruited and fought with overseas, some of whom were pretty nasty and involved in things like child rape. And that was cases that we actually got taken on. That we brought those people into this country, and we normalized it. We brought them in, and we didn't even give them a briefing of what the rules were. You also had people from the State Department there. You had the Department of the Air Force. You had Homeland Security. You had HSI. You had the FBI dealing with major crimes. You had CID from the Army and OSI from the Air Force. I met with so many federal agencies in August and September and October of 2021 because of these types of things. And hundreds of these people would go missing. We'd come in and it was like, hey, do you know where this person is? Nope, they just walked off. Do they have any right to be here? We don't know. Nobody even knew. So, Kim, the issue is this. We haven't even seen the door closed yet. They are still putting people on the field for the next 20 days. And that's what Americans need to realize. This is not even started yet. The fact that January this is a preview. This is the please be quiet. The film is about to start. We haven't even started the previews before we get to the main feature, in my estimation. It's my belief that we're going to see a lot of this, and I don't want to see it. I wish that this cup would pass from us. But I don't see any other way than imagining that we are going to see all of these things After the trap is shut, finally Donald Trump gets in, puts Tom Homan up there, says, let's get this border under control. Let Border Patrol and CBP do their damn jobs and get back to work, which will be great, and they'll feel great about it. Then you've got hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people here with nefarious intent, some of whom will assimilate because they just go, man, it's really good here, and ladies are pretty, and it's really nice to be able to be in a place where I can go and get food at all hours of the day. That might be awesome for them. And some of them are going to go back and they're going to do exactly what they were trained to do. And they're Saudis and they're Kuwaitis and they're whatever else. And, if you want to listen to people, like I said, talking to Sarah Adams last night, they have all kinds of chatter from the various different terrorist groups that were deprioritized. They were not being collected on by the CIA. They were not being dealt with at the State Department. They were not being looked at in the same way by the FBI. And they've totally been ignored. We're about to have to pay attention big time. And we're doing like an ugly cleanup, and we're going to work feverishly to do left of bang because we're heading towards right of bang very, very quickly, I think.
Why do you think all of this was very deliberate and intentional, premeditated to ignore these real and actionable threats by, the FBI, the CIA? Like, what is behind all of this, in your honest opinion?
I wish I knew. I don't understand how people that, you know what I mean? And
I was counting on you because I'm thinking about this.
I wish I had I spend so much time thinking about this. My wife and I do this all the time. It's like, we always say the word they, don't we? I mean, if you listen to yourself, you listen to myself, I say they did this and they did that. Who is they?
Who is they?
And why is they unable to just simply understand that there is a second dimension to their terrible decisions? Okay, maybe you brought in a bunch of people that'll be future Democrat voters. What if they want to kill you? Right. What if they don't want to be here and they want to fundamentally transform it? How rich would you have to be?
What if they don't care? What if they want the votes and they don't care about all the consequences?
That's right. What if there's just no plan, which is the scariest thing to me, and I actually tend to lean that way. We have this belief that human beings are rational actors. I sent it to one of my buddies I've known since high school, and he said, yeah, they're all a bunch of rash holes. And it's like, okay, that'd be fun. We're not rational actors. We're emotional actors, and we operate with things that we think make sense and we justify. But we can see our friends on the left, and they should be our friends. A lot of the things we agree on, like how to raise our kids, and for all the craziness, you go out there and try to get a parent that has a normal kid and say, oh no, your kid's going to turn into the other gender right now. They'll look at you like you're nuts because they don't live that way. And they still marry like normal people, and they still have babies, and they raise dogs, and they live in your neighborhood, and they go to the grocery store. They haven't lived like some alternate reality. So how on earth are those people going to cope with the fact that they're not making good decisions? They have said things that are truly awful. I think I'm on the verge of radicalizing a couple of people, or at least like red pilling a little bit some of the people on the political left, like some of the hard journalists that are out there, NBC, MSNBC types, because I just asked them, you talk about fairness, you talk about democracy, you talk about all these values, and then I'm just going to ask you questions about things that happened, like let's say Trump's first inauguration. It was a big old riot. And there were a bunch of people that were let off. And then you saw what happened on January 6th of 21, which we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary of. And you look at that and you go, were those people treated the same? And they go, well, I guess not. I go, how do you justify that? And they did for a long time. They said, well, they're really bad people. It's like, well, they're not. And they weren't violent. And now you know it too, because all the facts come out. How do they, whoever the hell they is, how do they do this? And the answer is, I don't think they've thought it through. I think we have a bunch of, we have about the same amount of control on this country as the president does of his faculties, the current, resident of the White House, the guy who may or may not have fallen down and smashed his face and nobody wants to talk about it. It's just, I think we are dealing with, hopefully, a strong hand about to grab the wheel, and the wheel's just been driving around on a bumpy dirt road, and we've hit a whole bunch of bumps. I hope Donald Trump comes in and straightens this thing out, but it's going to be a hostile takeover of the government, and then it's going to be a counterinsurgency. He's going to have to win hearts and minds. It's not just Kash Patel. It's every agency, and it's every single part of the executive branch that wants to do the status quo, which you accurately named earlier. They want things the way they've been because they haven't seen what it looks like when it gets really bad. And people in New Orleans are now experiencing it. People in Vegas probably now have a little taste of it. People are starting to see the status quo is actually really terrifying. And if we're about 15 minutes deeper into this story, that's where it's going to get really, really scary, even for people on the left.
Yeah, I don't know. They're not thinking about it. They're not thinking about the consequences and what's going on here. And by the way, just a quick aside for a second, though, how bizarre, because this whole bromance, bro, I've been called
like
bro, dude, by like Carl Higby, military operator, former SEALs. That's very funny, and I crack up. I should look at the text messages. I'm like, oh my god. He's like, dude,
That's how it
you
is.
come on
I'll
my
call,
show.
yeah, my wife, I call my
Bro.
wife dude sometimes. She doesn't even correct me anymore. We've been married
No,
long
it's
enough, she
like,
doesn't care.
why bother? So we see this attack as well in Vegas in the Cybertruck, and we've seen the bromance between President Trump and Elon Musk. And all of a sudden, there's a Cybertruck in front of the Trump hotel that's blown up. I mean, it's a little bizarre.
It is. Okay, so I'm gonna be really cautious and dance around the edges. I have inside information that I don't want to give out to anybody at the moment because it's not mine to give. But I was privy to it this morning.
Bro, why
So
are you
let me say-
teasing me?
I know. So you need to just stay tuned. There's more to it. I actually was on the phone this morning with the FBI, helping them get some information, putting them in touch with a source. But it doesn't sound like there's a connection between these two. And I don't want to get any more
Between the
definitive than that.
two.
The two bombers, yeah,
Right.
the two people, or the two trucks. There's a lot of similarities. I think it just ends at superficiality. That's my take on it. From what I know,
I think so. I agree with that.
it's like saying that he was at Fort Bragg and the other guy was at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty. Hopefully that gets fixed as well. I was probably there at the same time for whatever that's worth. I did a 4-month TDY out to Fort Bragg in 2010, I think. And, maybe we were all there at the same time. That doesn't mean we knew each other. I looked it up. There's 55,000 military personnel on that base, at least. There's another 12 to 15,000 civilians. We're talking almost 100,000 people were in that area. Just because you live in the same town or you went to the same place at some time, it doesn't mean you know anything. So that's
Right.
part one.
Okay.
There's not really any similarities in the construction. There's not any similarities. It doesn't seem like. One seemed to have a mental problem from the information I was privy to. Looks like a very rapid onset sort of spiral into something that involves mental illness and resulted in something really terrible. That the questions about the bombing and the capabilities of the bomb and why did an SF guy not create a better bomb? If you look into the background, he was an 18 Echo, which is a comm sergeant, and he was an 18 Fox, which means he was an intel sergeant. So if he had been an 18 Bravo, a weapons guy, or if he'd been an 18 Charlie and been involved in, like, let's say demolitions or the what they call the engineer status,
Very
I would
different.
expect more. It doesn't mean he didn't have, explosives training. It sounds like he probably did, and he probably had some. But, like I had a little bit of explosive training. I got about 100 hours of demo time. That doesn't mean that I'm going to go make a great bomb. The reason why is because when you're in the military, well, think about this. You got access to certain things. You got access to C4. You got access to detonators. You got access to det cord. You have all those things. When you go out into the civilian world, you don't necessarily have access to all the things that you might have in the military. So building a really capable bomb, it's likely he was trying to scrounge up the things he did. And it sounds like he got something that blew up. He just chose the absolute wrong vehicle, Elon Musk's Cybertruck, which if you've ever been in one, they're insane. And they feel like you're climbing into a tank, and it apparently just funneled the blast straight up. So
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's wild. It's a wild vehicle too.
Really, it really is. You've never seen anything like it. It's just so crazy. And then you have Trump with Elon all the time, and then this happened in front of the hotel, and I don't know. But so where do we go, from here? So what would you like the first 100 days of the FBI, of the Bureau, to look like?
I would like to see the senior management stopped, frozen, and removed. The people that need to be removed are going to be the assistant directors. They're going to be the executive assistant directors. They're going to be a lot of the SACs, the special agents in charge of the field offices. So these are the senior executive ranks. They need to be obliterated. They need to be gutted out, and we need to do like an hourglass flip. Imagine if the bottom of the hourglass is already full in the base, and you have all of your GS-13s, your brick agents, the people doing the cases, your GS-14s, your frontline supervisors, people that came in to do the mission of the FBI. They need to be put into management positions against their will, probably. That's the crazy part of it. We need to remove a huge chunk of this culture, this toxic culture of status quo, and we're serving the Bureau. So that's part one. We need to see a very rough and aggressive grab that has to happen from Donald Trump all the way down to all of his cabinet picks and even the sub-cabinet picks. In the same way that when you touch a subject in a criminal investigation and you bring him into custody, the first time you touch that person, the first time they hear your voice, they're making a decision right then and there. Am I going to comply and obey, or am I about to fight this guy or gal? And the answer needs to be that they decide compliance is the only way I survive this. And so there's a way you do that. That's actually better for them. It's better for America. It's better for the people going in. If a firm and aggressive touch starts, it doesn't have to be mean, and it doesn't have to be without empathy, but it has to be firm, direct, and with no compromise on these are the principles that we came in to do. We're going to enact our agenda. You can get on the train, or you can fall off the train and be left beside. And then the last thing I think is the American people need to strap in. I think we are about to deal with what I've been calling a Western experience, kind of a Wild West moment where a lot of things could happen and a lot of people are going to be left alone, and some people will never experience any part of it. And some people are going to deal with gunfights in the street, and they're going to deal with violence and craziness like people saw in New Orleans last night. And the best thing you can do, because everybody goes, how on earth do you deal with this? I mean, even special operators can be ambushed if they're not expecting it and there's an explosive device. That's the reason why ambushes are effective. You know, it changes the mismatch of skills and capabilities and preparation. It knocks all those things out. The one thing that everybody can do, they can go take a stop the bleed course. They can go take some emergency first aid. They can learn how to do a proactive response. I heard Steve Friend say, be your own first responder. That comes from a mindset of nobody's coming to save me. It's just up to us. It's up to me and my family and my neighbors. That's a big deal. The people in your church, the people at your workplace, whether you agree with politics or not, know how to put on a tourniquet, know how to stop a bleed, know how to, move to contact and pull people out of dangerous areas. I'll give you kind of a weird little reason why I think this way. I did an after action report when I was retraining to be a paramedic in 2017, I think. I was working for the FBI. I did it at George Washington University. And they did an after action on the Pulse nightclub shooting. So everybody will remember that was a big jihad situation, right? Yes. That was a big Islamic terrorist thing. 49 people lost their lives. 7 of those people died from what they called positional asphyxia, which is to say they were cramped down like this with their chin in their chest, hiding and making themselves as small as possible. And they died basically of shock and suffocating themselves by not breathing. And they went down a spiral where their heart stopped because they were asphyxiated. They didn't die from a gunshot wound. And the one thing that would have saved them is someone grabbing their belt, pulling them off and laying them down on their back or laying them on their side in the recovery position. 7 of the 49. That's a lot. And so action is always going to beat reaction. Being proactive in your church, in your community, in your grocery store, wherever people might be targeted that are soft targets, at your children's school, it doesn't matter. If you know how to act, you may not be able to stop something horrible from happening. That's the job of law enforcement. They're failing us. I mean, we just seen it. And so we know that may happen again. But you can save lives by being proactive. And everybody wants to be able to grab onto something like, how on earth do I affect positive change? They're not going to be in the government, most of them. You can go out there, whether you're a mom, whether you're a dad, whether you're a grandparent, you can go out there. If you're a teenager, you can have the wherewithal to learn basic CPR, first aid skills. You should do that anyway. It's just a good thing to learn. You might come on a traffic accident, but it gives people something because nobody wants to be without hope. It's the number one thing I remember from my survival training when I was in the Air Force. They always talk about the things you can survive without. You can survive without, air for 3 minutes and water for 3 days and food for 3 weeks and, some other things like that. Shelter for like a couple days, whatever, hours. But you can't survive without hope. You got to actually have a forward-looking idea. And I do think that Trump's message has all been about hope. It's always been about hope. That's what Make America Great Again meant to people. It was a nostalgia and a hope. So people need something to look forward to, and they need to know how to go do something. So go take a Stop the Bleed course. They're almost always free. They're offered all over the place. Go get a first aid, a wilderness first responder. Do something that makes you feel it. So that's my concrete advice for the day.
No, I think it's very good advice, and people should heed it, take it, and take action, because you can be that one person that can make a big change or save a life. Be prepared, help yourself, your family members, your community, your neighbors, etc. I think it's fantastic advice. Tell us what you have going on right now, and this is your chance, my friend, to promote, pitch, anything you want, because people are always fascinated with what you're up to.
Sure. So I run a podcast 5 days a week on Rumble as well. People can find it earlier, not competing with your time slot. It's at 09:30 Eastern time. And we do that. It's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. It also simulcasts over on YouTube and X as long as they keep us. So they can follow me there. I'm at Kyle Seraphin at all the different places. If you want to follow the social media handle, locals, it's kyleseraphin.com. So that's pretty easy too. It's pretty much just my name. I've taken on a new project that I wanted to start doing one-on-one long form profiles with people that just don't get to tell the whole story.
Sure.
And for January, I'm doing J6ers. And so I've brought on multiple hour long, we take pee breaks and we come back to the mic and we sit and we just talk and have a cup of coffee with people who are so much more than 30 minutes of walking around the Capitol on one day. They're Marines, they're journalists, they're musicians, they're fathers, they're plumbers, they're small business owners. They're people that really got the short shrift from our government, and they're real people. And so I just did some really long form stuff. I've got so many hours of video I got to edit together, but they're going to start dropping on Sunday on my Rumble channel. So people can start looking for that too.
So 9:30 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be fascinating. I hope you win an award for this, because, these people, their lives have been so insanely impacted, torn apart, and their families. It's just a grave injustice of epic proportions, and my heart breaks for them. And it is disgusting that our own government did this to these Americans. So let's see what happens. Trump's going to get in. We get sworn in on the 20th and take care of a lot of business. So people, educate yourself. Please continue to follow Kyle Seraphin. Check out his new series. It's going to be fantastic. You will learn something and then tell all your friends. Kyle, thank you so much for being on the program. God bless you, my friend.
God bless you. Good luck in your new endeavor coming out too. I heard you're taking a trip, so
we got to secure the embassy.
I love it.
I know. Oh God, don't come into my embassy looking for trouble.
That's right. That's right.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. And you should go check out the Birch Gold Group. What did I tell you? If you want to end the cost of living crisis, vote Trump and diversify your portfolio by investing into gold. And now, in the new year, you have a better chance than ever to plan for the future. Birch Gold will take you through the process step by step, answer any questions, and help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold so you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Here's what you do. Text KG to 989898 today. That's KG to the number 989898. Check it out. Prepare for your future. It's going to be good with Trump. And in closing, this is not the start of the year that any one of us wanted to see. Americans deserve to be able to celebrate New Year's without worrying about terrorism. The second Trump administration will defeat the threat of ISIS like it did before, and it will secure the border from any threats. Making America great again means making America safe again. And we'll continue to be right here on Rumble, where we reject the false narrative and always seek the truth. So please be sure to download the Rumble app, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, like and share, and tell all of your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And please also be sure to follow me across all platforms: X, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and now on TikTok. Stay tuned to Rumble for all the latest breaking news coverage. And don't miss Don Jr.'s big show at 6 p.m. Eastern with Sebastian Gorka. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Happy New Year to all of you, and I'll talk to you all again very soon. God bless.